Business 210, Principles of Management with Professor Joe Lane, Chapter 9, Human Resource Management. Good news. If you've just finished, or whenever you finish Chapter 8, you remember I went off camera a couple of times to make sure that I had enough minutes to finish our discussion of Chapter 8. Chapter 8 was basically about organizational structure and organizational culture. And you know, there wasn't a lot of material in that chapter that we covered as being most familiar with or know, but it was really important material, and we made it through that. But you knew I was making sure that I didn't end up running out of film. Good news. I put a new chip in. I have 6 hours. So, as long as I can get through with Chapter 9 within the next 6 hours, we're going to be fine. I'm going to probably cut it down a little bit, though, below 6 hours, if that's okay with you. Human Resource Management. We actually have a course here at Delta, Business 131, which is Human Resource Management. I've taught that course a couple of times. I haven't taught it lately just because, you know, just so many courses that we can teach. But Human Resource Management is a field in and of itself. We probably could talk 6 hours about it today. I'm not, but I'm just saying it's a huge field. It's a field that you might be interested in. You know, I've thought during my work time, my work career, and I was basically in the financial, I was served as a chief financial officer for several organizations for 30 plus years. If I had to come back and it said, okay, now you can go into business, because I know that's what you enjoy, but you can't do the finance thing, what area would you like to go into? I think it might be human resource management. I like the area of human resource management. It's a great area for a career, by the way. What's the most valuable asset that a business has? It's employees. How important is it to get the right employees? Remember, we were talking about the right fit? You can keep from having a lot of problems and a lot of situations that you don't want to have by carefully recruiting and selecting and training and retaining the right employees. Because if you get the employees the type of employee you want with the right fit, you're going to have a great employee. And then another thing is, you don't want to get a great employee and then they leave you for someone else. Then you have to go through all the expense of finding someone else and training them. Now, I use this little, I don't think I put this on your handout. This is just mine. This is a way, kind of a line graph of what I think human resource management is. First of all, in human resource management, you've got to find folks that you need to hire. Go out and find them. Then from the ones you find, you have to make a selection of the right person or persons, depending on the number of jobs. Then you have to go through an official hiring process where you hired that person. After that person is hired, training begins. You have to appraise or evaluate that person periodically, and you're working to retain those good employees that you have. Now, this is true for every employee within an organization. And then one other thing is, before you can do this, before you can start this, you've got to determine your human resource needs. You know, what are my needs so I can go out and find and select the right people? Well, I'm going to hire all the people for my company. So once I hire all the people for my company, I'm done, right? I don't have to worry about finding and selecting and hiring anymore. All I have to worry about is training, appraising, and retaining. Well, not exactly, and you know that. You're going to continually be hiring people. It's an ongoing human resource management, including this part right here, is continually ongoing. Why? Why would you have to hire additional people? Or why would you have to hire people? Once you've hired everybody, why are you going to have to be hiring people still? I wish we were in class. I always like to get some good answers for that. But we know some people after a while are going to retire. Some people are going to die. Some people are just going to decide they don't want to work anymore. Some people are going to leave your company to go to another company. You may expand your company. Remember we talked about strategy? Maybe you're getting into a big growth strategy and you're going to have to expand and hire additional people. Maybe you've changed what you're doing. Maybe you've changed your vision and your mission a little bit. In some areas of your company you're closing down, and other areas perhaps you're opening and you're having to retrain those people. So you're continually going to be involved in all phases of human resource management. Okay, that being the case, and it's a pretty exciting stuff, I guess we better start off with a no here for chapter 9. I want you to know what human resource management is. Activities that managers perform to plan for, attract, select, develop, and retain an effective workforce. It's the stuff that has to be done to make sure you have an effective workforce. One more time, and this is a no. Activities managers perform to plan for, attract, develop, and retain an effective workforce. A key to a company's success, a key to a company's overall strategy, mission, vision, is the hiring through finding and selecting, training an effective workforce. Okay, now when you get to talking about human resource management and you get to talking about employees and a workforce, there's 3 terms in the world of human resource management that are used. A company has social capital. Now that's kind of you know what social is, and if you ever had economics, capitalism. All right, social capital. So one of the things we want to understand is, what is social capital? Social capital has to do with the actions and the knowledge of employees to bring about economic and productive potential. Now I know you're saying, whoa, wait a minute, what? It's not something we think of that often, but let's just employees bring to your company social capital. That is their knowledge and their actions. The knowledge they have and the actions they take. Social capital. And the knowledge that they have and the actions they take bring about the possibility and certainly, hopefully, economic and productive potential. The economic and productive potential that each employee has with the knowledge that they have and the actions they're going to take. That's social capital. Just be familiar with it. Secondly, knowledge workers. More and more workers are using their brains instead of their physical attributes. Now, let me just do it real quick. I have tremendous respect for people that do physical labor. Whether it's skilled physical labor like an electrician, or maybe slightly less physical labor as digging a ditch. I have tremendous respect for those folks. Those are jobs that have to be done and done well. However, in 2020, to give you an example, if you were looking down an assembly line plant at Ford Motor Company in 1920, 100 years ago, you'd see tons and tons and tons of people building automobiles, building Fords. If you look down an assembly line now at Ford Motor Company, you don't see any people. You see robots, robotic arms, and you see people sitting up operating those. Knowledge workers, primarily concerned with generating and interpreting information. Skills. Workers now require more and more knowledge, even at jobs that historically have been considered maybe physical jobs, there's certainly become more and more of a knowledge component of it. Okay. And then social capital. Workers bring human capital, their knowledge and their actions, but they also bring social capital. And that's the relationships. Building strong and cooperative relationships within a company is very, very good. It helps that company to have that kind of cohesiveness, building strong and competitive, or not competitive, cooperative relationships. So I just want you to be familiar with what human capital is, knowledge workers are, and what social capital is. Okay? Those are terms within human resource management that's important. And you stop and think about it. I mean, what is that saying? It's saying that the knowledge and action of workers, more and more workers becoming or having to utilize knowledge to do their job, and strong and cooperative relationships are important in an organization. And that's what these things are talking about. Okay, I mentioned a minute ago, and let me tell you one thing I did just to trick you up, just to confuse you. Okay, it's chapter 9, we're almost finishing unit 2. I don't want to make it too easy on you. My notes probably are not exactly in line with your text if you have a text. If you don't have a text, it doesn't really matter. Also, I'm going to skip around on my notes a little bit as well. So, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. I just think it makes it flow a little bit smoother. All right. Before you start doing this, finding, selecting, let's go find some folks. Why? I want to find some people. I want you to find some employees. So we can start selecting who we want. Well, what are you going to use them for? Something? Well, the point I'm making here is if you look somewhere here, strategic human resource planning, all this takes planning. Before you start finding and selecting and hiring, before you start doing this part, you've got to continually determine your human resource needs. And just like you don't find, select, and hire one time and you're done forever, it's an ongoing process. Determining your human resource needs is an ongoing process as well. If you had, we already talked about a number of the different reasons that people may leave. Let's go back. Remember I talked about retirement? Let's say that you have a particular department within your company, and there's 23 people in that department. And it's a production type department, something that's very critical to your company. Of those 23 people, human resource, your human resource people, they've determined by using the spreadsheets and all that sort of thing that we learn here, that of those 23 people, 11 of them are over the age of 55. Is that important to know? What's that saying? Within the next few years, a number of those people are likely to do what? Retire. Should you be making plans on how you're going to replace those folks in that particular department? Are you going to have to go out and find folks? Are you going to transfer folks? There's going to be an expansion at your company. You need to be determining human resource needs for that. You get the idea. This has to come before this. Make sure that you know what you need when you need it as you're doing this. Okay. Part of determining your human resource needs is is doing a job analysis. A job analysis is made up of two things: a job description and a job specification. What he says here, when you do a job analysis, you perform or you compile a job description and a job specification. Now, what's a job description? I know, a description of the job. Well, that's okay. It's the task that a job performs. It's the things that a job does. If you do this job, you do this, and this. It's a task. Which jobs should have a job description? Did you say everyone? That would be a good answer. Every job should have a job description. Because if you don't know what the job does, it's going to be hard to find and select. If you don't know what the job does, do you even need that job or not? Does that job fit into the things that's needed within your company? So I mean, you got to have a job description for every job. What's a job specification then? Specifications of the job. Okay, it's not as easy. I'm not going to let you get away with that. Tell me a little bit more. What's a job specification? It's the education and the skills and knowledge that are needed to perform the job. This has to do with the job. This has to do with the person that performs the job. Which jobs need a job specification? You got it. Every job. So, as a part of determining your human resource needs, should you be sure that you do a job analysis on every job? You have a job description and you have a job specification for every job. And they are updated. They are updated. If a job description changes for a position, you need to update that. If the requirements, the skills, the specifications need to be changed. So make sure that you have a job description, a job specification for each job. I'm looking at my handout here. Strategic Human Resource Planning, developing a systematic, comprehensive strategy for understanding current employee needs and predicting future needs. That's what we're talking about here. This is determining human resource needs. That's a part of human resource planning. He says, in doing that, make sure that you have a job analysis on every job, a job description and a job specification. Then, last little thing I put in this section, future, what staffing the organization might need and the likely sources. If you have this kind of information ongoing, then you're going to have an idea of what staffing you're going to need if you continually plan, determine your needs, and then how you're going to be able to fill those needs. Okay, the next thing we talk about on my sheet is the legal aspects of human resource management. I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. Well, not just a minute, but in a little bit. Remember, I got 6 hours. Okay. I'm going to go to since I have it on sheets, I'm going to go to the back of the sheet. And I want to talk a little bit about the human resource management process. And so we start off human resource management. After we've done our human resource planning, we've determined our human resource needs, we have job descriptions, job specifications, and so ongoing we are having to hire employees for our company. Okay, so how does that work? You start off with recruitment. I called it find, and here obviously the author gives it a better title, recruitment. How to attract qualified applicants for the job opening or openings that you have. That's what recruitment is. I'd be familiar with what recruitment is. I mean, it's pretty simple, but recruitment is simply going out and trying to find folks that are qualified for the job openings that you have. Now, how can you recruit? Well, the big division is you can recruit internally, you can recruit externally. Sometimes you may want to hire from within, if I can use that term, hire, by promoting someone or transferring someone. And so I have I have an opening for a job right here, but I have this person right here that would be a perfect fit for that job. So I'm going to move that person over here to this job. Now that leaves this job open, so I may have to go external to fill this job at some point. So you have internal recruiting and you have external recruiting. But through promotions, transfers, retraining, there's a number of ways that you can recruit from within. Now, of course, the way a lot of recruiting is done is external recruiting. What are some ways that you can recruit externally? I wish we were in class kind of sitting in here, because it's kind of fun to talk about this. What's the simplest and easiest, I'm not saying the best, but it's the simplest and easiest way to recruit people? How about a help wanted sign? Simple and easy. It didn't say necessarily what's best, but it could be. You ever drive by places where they say, oh, we're hiring, help wanted? Well, that's one way they're recruiting. Now, you think if we lost our chancellor here, well, let me go back. Our chancellor just retired, Dennis Epps. And then we have an interim chancellor, a chancellor that's going to be here until a regular chancellor is, a full-time chancellor is appointed. Do you think we're going to put a help wanted sign out front? Chancellor wanted? No, it's not the way you're going to recruit. We'll be recruiting nationwide using some headhunters, some professional recruiting companies to help us find our next chancellor. So external recruiting, newspaper, that's kind of old. Online, most of it using the internet online for recruiting. Colleges and universities, job fairs. There's all kinds of ways to recruit externally. What's best? Depends on what position you're hiring for. The best way, could you use TV? Well, if you were trying to hire a production assistant for your TV station, maybe a great way to do it. If you're trying to hire a job that people that watch television are probably going to be watching TV and are familiar with that, that might be a good way to do it. Radio, would you do it that way? Sure. So there's a number of different external ways. Employment agencies. Just depends on what's going to be best. One of the things our book talks about is what's the best type of external recruitment. And it said that most human resource management professionals say employee referrals. Employee referrals. If your employee or one of your employees refers somebody to you, hey, I know so-and-so and I think that person would be a good fit. It says that's one of the best ways to recruit externally. I'll give you an example. When I went to work for the Monroe City school system, we had to hire a administrative assistant for me. And so we were going through the process of doing that, and I asked the folks there in the area I said, anybody have any idea who might be good? And they mentioned someone. They said, yes, so-and-so used to work here, but they left. Well, that reason kind of laid a red flag. Why did they leave? And they said, well, they really didn't want to leave, but they just got a better job opportunity somewhere else. And it just paid more, and they just needed to leave. Felt it was best for their family. And so I said, do you think they'd be interested in coming back? And they knew this person. They said, yeah. I said, the person really enjoyed working here. I think a position like that, they'd really enjoy it. And so we contacted the person, and the person was, seemed to be interested. I mean, why would they be good? They already had experience at our school system. They already knew a lot of the people there. They got along with those people there. They knew the policies and procedures, all of that. And so now obviously we had to advertise, we had to go through the process. We couldn't just give it to that person. I mean, you had to go through and make sure you got the best person. And then when we did, and then that person did apply for the job, and they received the job. They didn't receive the job because they had been referred by someone within, or they didn't receive the job for a reason like that. They received the job because they were the best qualified. They had a bachelor's degree in office administration. They had experience, all those things that we needed. And the 8 years that I spent in Monroe City Schools, that person, was in that position with me the whole 8 years and did an absolutely wonderful, wonderful job. So anyway, way too long a story there, but be familiar with it. One of the ways that business professionals, human resource management professionals say it's kind of one of the best ways to do external recruiting is by employee referrals. Because, look, an employee is not going to refer you to someone who's a dummy because it's going to make them look bad. All right. Now let's talk a little bit. Next comes, you're going to recruit. So you've gone out and you've done recruiting, and let's just make this easy. There's one job that you're trying to fill, and you got 7 applicants. You got 17 applicants for the job. Is that possible? Sure. Then you go through a selection process. I don't need 17, I need 1. And so there's some things that you can do. I get too still in my overhead. You know, I've got all these hot spotlights on me. You can tell. Well, actually, I do. They're not particularly hot. But then also I have the overhead lights here up front on. And if I get too still, those are motion sensitive, and they cut off. They think I've gone to sleep. All right. As far as selection, the application. You know, a person has to fill out an application. Most of the time, that's done online and everything. And then, you know, your resumes, reference checks, all these things are part of the selection process. Something that I mentioned here is once you get past the applications and that sort of thing. Oh, by the way, can you eliminate some people by simply looking at the application? The answer is yes. Now, when you go out to hire somebody, should you have available the job description? Sure. Should you have available the job specification? Sure. Here's the minimum qualifications that we want. An associate's degree, 3 years of experience, and such. Certified in Microsoft Office, whatever. Okay. So your job, you know, so should you have a job description or job specification available as a part of the recruiting process? Yes. You go through the applications, and a number of the people that applied don't have the minimum specifications. What should you do? Throw them out. Really? Yeah. Because you could get in problems with discrimination in the hiring process if you didn't. You make up the rules. You're the one that says, here's what we want. And so if you make up the rules and say, here's the specifications you want, then you don't follow your own rules. Some of the people that apply, they're going to say, wait a minute, that's not fair. And there are some legal consequences to that. All right. So anyway, with the application, the resumes, that sort of thing, you may well be down to 8 after you go through those. Then you go through, you go through an interview process. Now, for most positions, you do what's called a structured interview. You ask each person that you call in, and maybe we're going to call all 8 in. Probably will. You ask each one of them the same questions. Now, you may ask a follow-up question, but you ask them the same questions. Why do you do that? Because you're asking questions that are important to that particular job, and you can compare the answers of the different applicants when they come in. Okay? So that's called a structured interview. For most positions within an organization, certainly positions at the middle management down, you're going to use a structured interview. Sometimes at the higher levels, I'd say the upper management, you might use an unstructured interview. An unstructured interview is simply you just let it. Now, you may have 1 or 2 questions that you're going to start off with or something, but you simply just ask questions as you go through the interview. You don't structure the questions, you ask questions that come to mind. The interview committee does. I'd be familiar, I think, with what a structured interview is and an unstructured interview. Okay? Employment test. Can you have people take an employment test? Well, the answer is sure. But here's the deal. The employment test should have something to do with the job. Duh. Doesn't that make sense? Success on the test should have some indication toward success on the job. I may have mentioned in one of the previous chapters, I like to run. So we're going to hire somebody here in the business area at Delta Community College, a new employee. So I said, well, look, I might like to have somebody that I'd like to go out and do a run with me sometime. So maybe we can go out and do well, I'm not sure exactly how far I can run right now, as I told you, kind of getting back into it. But I want to have them to go out and run 3 or 4 miles with me. That's one of the tests we're going to give them. Is that a legitimate test? No. Being able to run 3 or 4 miles is not indicative of a success on the job as a business and technology professor. All right. But if you look at my handout, can you give tests that have to do with a person's ability? Yeah. Can you give tests that have to do with personality type tests? Remember that job fit, personality, and values as it fits the culture and everything of an organization? Can you give performance type? Maybe they're having to utilize technology, computers, that type of thing. So, in other words, can you give different types of tests? Performance tests, knowledge tests, ability tests, personality tests, that sort of thing. Sure, as long as those tests have something to do with success on the job. Can those tests be challenged by anyone? Sure, that's why you've got to make sure that you're utilizing proper testing. All right, one other thing about tests. So just be familiar with there are a number of different type of tests that that is perfectly okay to give to employees as long as it relates to job success. Now, there's 2 words that you're probably not real familiar with. That's okay. Reliability and validity. Tests have to be reliable and tests have to be valid for them to be used. What does that mean? Okay, get your pencil. I didn't write it down for you. A test is valid if it measures what it's supposed to measure. If it's a performance test, and it has to do with how fast a person is on a keyboard. If that test really measures the speed of that person on a keyboard, that would be a valid test. So tests that you give need to be valid. If they are supposed to measure such and such, then they should measure such and such. If they measure what they're supposed to measure, they are valid. If they measure what they're supposed to measure every time you give it, they're reliable. So you can't have a test that doesn't measure what you're trying to measure. And you can't have a test that measures it sometimes, but other times it doesn't measure it. Tests have to be valid, they measure what they're supposed to measure, and they measure what they're supposed to measure every time they're utilized. Reliable. Be familiar with the fact that tests need to be reliable and valid. Okay, now we've gone through this, we've done the testing, we've done the interviewing, we've gotten it down to the best hire, one person. I think, this is not on your handout, I'll just mention it real quick. I think hiring should be formal. I think there should be a formal hiring process where you sit down with a contractual document that the person signs. I think attached to that contractual document should be a job description, a job specification. I think it should be a formal process you go through. We're delighted to have you here at a salary of $34,000 a year. 34? I thought it was 43. Let's get all that done in the formal hire. Okay. Once you've done the formal hiring, and HR has a lot to do with the formal hiring because a lot of the contractual form, a lot of your forms and that sort of thing, they'll take care of those things for you. After you do all that, now you're an employee. Start training. Let's talk a little bit about training and development. What's the first training that most people get when they get into an organization? What's it called? The very first training that you'll probably go through. I'll give you a hint. You probably already know, just in case you don't. That's an O. How about orientation? The first training that you normally get is orientation. What orientation does, it helps newcomers learn the ropes. It gets you familiar with the job, familiar with the setting. You get orientation about the company itself, and then you'll get orientation, or you should, about the particular department area you're going to be working in. Let you become one of the employees. Make you feel a part of things. Orientation's important. Doing a good job of orienting new employees, whether they're whether they're non-managerial employees or if they are in whatever level of management. Helping newcomers learn the ropes, so to speak. All right, now let's talk about, that's the first kind of training. Now I could spend, 2 hours talking about training. All the different types of training that's done. Vestibule training, mentorship training, on-the-job training. There's all kinds of training. What kind of training does a person need? I don't know. Depends on the job. Depends on what they're doing. It depends on what you want that person to do now and what you want that person to do later. Maybe you've hired somebody and after a while you find out that person could make really a good manager. You may put them into some type of management training program. So here's what I want to say about training, kind of like Forrest Gump. Here's what I want to say about that. Why do you train people? To make them more better, to improve their performance. Is that good for the company? Yep. Is that good for the employee? Yep. You hire somebody in your, let's make it an easy example, in your IT department. People that are in information technology, they have one major fear, that they become outdated. You know how quickly technology changes? Okay, if you're a younger person and you're upward mobile in your career, and you go to work for a company, and that company does not stay current with technology, they get a generation or two behind. Now you've got a good job, and you enjoy the job, and it's fine. But what if you decide at some point you want to go somewhere else, or you need to go somewhere else? Well, if you try to go somewhere else and you're two changes behind in technology, your marketability has probably been cut in half. So training to keep employees, let's say in the IT, to keep them on the cutting edge is good for the company, but it's good for the employee. Back when I worked for the Washington Parish School Board, anywhere we worked, but I'll use them as an example. We made sure, at any place I worked, that people were kept on the cutting edge of technology where they worked. And the reason for that is they knew that if they left, they could get a job somewhere else because the technology we were using was technology that was used in other places as well. Now, they didn't want to leave. They didn't intend to leave. But this sounds strange, but it was easier, it made it easier to keep people by keeping them at the highest level of technology. Does that make sense? Because they knew if they wanted to leave, they'd be able to get a job somewhere else. But they really didn't want to. Okay. But if we had started to slack up on our technology, they'd have had to get out to keep from hurting their marketability. Okay, so that's kind of important. So training and development, you do it to help people perform better. All right. Let's talk a little bit about performance appraisal. Be familiar with what training is. Be familiar with what orientation is, kind of the opportunity, first training for people to kind of learn the ropes. Be familiar with the fact that what training is for is to help employees improve their performance. It's good for them, it's good for the company. Appraisal. Should employees be appraised? Yes. That didn't take long, did it? You should do an appraisal of your employees. If you've ever been evaluated or appraised, usually they have some type of an appraisal instrument. And there are certain things that there are certain standards that they want you to meet. You know, the standards may have to do with punctuality, the standard may have to do with knowledge, but you know, there's that checklist of things they go through that are a part of your evaluation instrument. There are certain performance standards that you have to meet, and they evaluate on you on how well you meet those performance standards. Just as a quick side note, where should those performance standards come from? Where should you go to be able to find and develop or establish performance standards? Right there. In the job description, a description of the task of that job, you should be able to look at the task of that job and from those tasks pull out certain standards of performance that if they meet these standards on these areas, they'll be doing a good job. So it comes from the job. That's why you got to keep the job description updated, because you got to keep your performance standards updated. A couple of things about performance standards. A couple of things about appraisal or evaluation. Why do you appraise or evaluate employees? So I can fire them. No. Does a performance evaluation lead to a person's termination? It could, but that's not why you're remember, whenever you lose people, that means I lose. We messed up, something happened. When we terminate a person, that's bad for the company, because we got to replace that person. There's just a lot. So termination, sometimes it has to happen, but that's not a goal. A goal is to have loyal employees for a long, long time until they retire. You do performance appraisals for the same reason you do training, to improve performance. Who could do performance appraisals? Well, let's say you're in a work situation. Is it possible that you could work out a situation where customers can do a performance appraisal? I just took my wife's vehicle to get the oil changed and that sort of thing, and I did it at the dealership. It's a relatively new vehicle, about a year old. Took it to the dealership to have that done. I got a survey on my phone within a day or two to evaluate that service experience that I had at that dealership. So you know, as a customer, I'm evaluating. In a business, customers may actually evaluate you. Your peers may, people that are on the same level of management or wherever that you are, may also evaluate you. Your boss is going to evaluate you. Here at Delta, we have student evaluations, where in essence our customers evaluate us, and our superior or our boss evaluates us. So we have a couple of different evaluations that are done. By the way, I'm big on student evaluations. I think student evaluations are really important. I prefer face-to-face instruction, so I'm having to really kind of work on this not doing it that way. But we got to get past. I am slightly older than a number of people here at Delta. I am in what is called the endangered species as it relates to this COVID-19. A lot of people can be asymptomatic with it. A lot of people have relatively minor things. But if you are slightly older, some things like that, the chances of you having problems with it are much greater. So that being the case, I have to be particularly, those mitigating things, social distancing, mask, all that kind of stuff, I have to be particularly careful about that sort of thing. And so this is the reason why we're doing online hybrid. I'm really excited and looking forward to the day we can just get back to regular old I love this, but I love face-to-face classes the best, because I can really interact with you. So it's a little strange to be looking at a camera, but I'm just pretending that y'all are sitting out here in this classroom. But you get the opportunity to evaluate your instructors, and that's important that you do that. Because I think I think it's important what you think about how we're doing. Okay, all right. So anyway, performance appraisal, that's the deal behind performance appraisal. I want you to and be familiar with almost in every situation, the supervisor will do the appraisal of their employee at whatever level that is. And be familiar with the fact that performance appraisals are done just like for training to improve performance. Compensation. Let's talk a little bit about compensation as it relates to jobs. There's really three different types or areas of compensation. And I put these on your handout for you. Wages or salaries. Are wages or salaries important? Well, yes. What's my salary going to be? What's my wage? That's important for you as far as your job is concerned. Then incentives. Sometimes that's the second one. Sometimes you get some incentives as well. If you perform at a particular level, that is, you get, especially in the area of sales, there can be incentives, or if you perform at a certain level, there can be bonuses or things like that. So one area of compensation is wages and salaries. The second is incentives, and then benefits. In this day and time, benefits are almost as important as salary. If I ask you, and I would if we were in class, if you could only have one benefit, okay, you got your job, you've negotiated your salary, now you can have one benefit. What would that benefit be? Tell me. And different people will tell me different things. Some people will say, well, I want sick leave. I want to be able to have some type of health insurance. Wow, that's important. Maybe I want life insurance. I want paid vacation. Some people may tell me, well, I want a good retirement plan. And then I always have somebody say, well, I'd like to have a company vehicle. And I'll say, well, would you like to have a credit card to go with it? And I say, yeah, I'd like to have that too. So there's a number of different, hopefully your choice is not one benefit. But hopefully you understand how important benefits are. Health insurance is health care is very expensive. When you go to the hospital, it costs money, okay? And so a good health coverage with the company, could that be very important to you? If you told me just off the top of your head, I'll give you a salary of $50,000, I'll give you a salary of $60,000 a year, which is not bad in Monroe area. Or I'll give you a salary of $50,000 a year and health insurance, total, complete health insurance for your family. I might take the 50 and the health insurance because health insurance is expensive. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So anyway, the three areas of compensation: wages and salaries, incentives, and benefits. So make sure that as you go, if you're an employee or you're a prospective employee and you're going for an interview or something like that, and you're looking at a company that's perhaps being hired by that company, yes, examine and be ready to tell them, here's the salary that I would expect if they ask you. But also be very concerned about the benefits that they offer as well. Okay. I want to get back for a couple of minutes to finish up the first part of the handout on Chapter 9, and that is the legal requirements. What I could do here really is I could just take and write L-E-G-A-L. There's all kind of legal requirements as it relates to finding, selecting, hiring, training, appraising, retaining, having employees at your workplace, or even hiring employees to come to your workplace. So I want to talk a little bit about the legal requirements. It's on the first page of my handout here. There's 2 or 3 words that you probably need to be familiar with, but one of the big deals within the hiring process is something called discrimination. You cannot legally discriminate in hiring. You can't discriminate in trying to find people, select people, train, retain, have people in your employment. Okay? You cannot discriminate. What does that mean? Hired or promoted or not. You hire somebody or you promote somebody. Or you don't hire somebody or you don't promote somebody. And you do it for reasons not relative to the job. What? Here's what I'm saying. Why did you hire that person? They were cute. Why did you promote that person? They're my second cousin. They're a good friend of my friend that works with me. Why did I promote them? They're a Methodist. I'm a Methodist. Why did I hire that person? They're a runner. You know, we talked about that. You are not supposed to hire a person or promote a person or not hire a person or not promote a person for reasons that are not relative to the job. That's discrimination. Why didn't you hire them? They're a woman. They're Hispanic. That's discrimination. You can't discriminate. Is there discrimination? Yes. Is it illegal? Yes. What makes it illegal? Federal law. You ever heard of the Civil Rights Act? Title VII, Civil Rights Act? That deals with discrimination. You know, race, origin, religion, sexual orientation. You can't discriminate on. You can't discriminate. It's got to be based upon experience or skills or things relative to the job. Does that make sense? So, you see, that's why if you decided not to hire me and you hired somebody else that was younger than me, but I felt like that person wasn't nearly as qualified as me, but they got hired because they were younger than me, I can contest that. I can send off a complaint to the EEOC, Equal Opportunity Employment Corporation, in Dallas. It's a federal agency. And say I was discriminated against because of my age. Are there laws that protect people from age discrimination? You betcha. You see where I said? All right, so anyway, I don't want to get strung out. If I had you in here, we'd be more strung out. But for right now, you cannot lawfully discriminate against someone for things that are not, it has to be related to the job, why you did or did not do something. Not related to their origin, their sexual orientation, their race, their religion, their age, that sort of thing. Affirmative action, you'll hear that sometimes. You'll always hear things about discrimination. You can't discriminate. And people in the area of human resource management, they have to advise and assist other management to make sure, managers to make sure that they're not engaged in practices that are illegal. The HR people are the people who really need to know the law. Affirmative action, achieving equality of opportunity within an organization. Sometimes businesses are required to come up with an affirmative action plan. Remember a few chapters ago, I talked about I really liked white males over 50. I think white males over 50 or 55, whatever I said, are really neat people. Okay? Remember? And we were talking about diversity at the time. And I thought, well, if you've got a company and most of their employees, or let's put it this way, let's say most of their upper, middle, and all of their top management is white males over 50. In 2020, would that seem a little strange to you? I bet you all their customers are not white males over 50. So it appears to me that as you've gone through the process of hiring and promotion and this sort of thing, it appears that maybe something other than job performance has gotten involved in the promotion process. And sometimes companies have to get into affirmative action plans to correct that. We need some folks in upper management that aren't white males over 55. We need more diversity in your management to better reflect the diversity within our culture and the diversity within your customer base. Does that make sense? You know, here at Delta Community College, every faculty member and every employee is not white males over 50. It's a diversity of people because we serve a diverse population. And sometimes companies that have discriminated and have done things like that, they've been told, okay, you've got to put together an affirmative action plan to be able to bring more folks into your workforce or more folks into your management that better reflect the community, better reflect the culture. Affirmative action, achieving equality of opportunity within an organization, make up for past discrimination. Okay, one more, sexual harassment, well, two more. Sexual harassment. What is sexual harassment? Sexual harassment is something that can get you in trouble in a heartbeat when it comes to a company. When it comes to your employment. You can be a really, really, really great employee that's doing a really, really, really great job, that's in a really, really, really wonderful position. And you can get into some sexual harassment, and before you know it, your career is in shambles. So, piece of advice, don't engage in sexual harassment. Okay, what is it? Well, there's really two kinds of sexual harassment. There's what's called, and I put this in here, quid pro quo and hostile environment. I want you to be familiar with what discrimination is, just really what we've got on the sheet here. I want you to be familiar with what affirmative action is, just what I've got on my handout. I want you to be familiar with sexual harassment, unwanted sexual attention that creates an adverse work environment. There's two types, quid pro quo, hostile environment. Let's take quid pro quo first. That's the easiest one to explain. Here's the deal. I sure like, we've got a promotion coming up, and you're up for that promotion. I sure would like for you to come up to my camp this weekend, and let's go fishing and discuss your promotion. Or I might even be a little blunter. Let's go up to the camp this weekend and discuss your promotion, and I doubt we can probably find something better to do than fish. You say, what are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. How about some sexual favors here? You do something for me sexually, I give you that promotion. That's quid pro quo. That's illegal. Same thing. Title VII, Civil Rights Act. Federal law says that's illegal, and obviously it should be. Have you heard of any sexual harassment charges, social media, on TV, in the news in the last year or two? Woo, a lot. Yeah. Sexual harassment, quid pro quo. You give me something of a sexual nature, I'll give you something that you want from a work situation. That's illegal. Now here's the other kind of sexual harassment. This is a little bit harder. Hostile environment. That's putting you in an environment where you're uncomfortable. Let's say that in a workplace, you know how you have your own cubicle? And let's say there's a pretty big room and there's about 7 or 8 or 9 cubicles in that area. And you have the walls, but there's no ceiling. Well, it seems like every day, several of the folks, the guys, the good old boys, they start off the morning with the sexual joke of the day. They've got some sort of a sexual story to tell. And if it's a joke, it's all the better. And if the more, whatever it is, the better. Now, this person's telling it to these two people, but you're in your cubicle and you can hear it every day. And they're telling me these, let's just say it's these three guys, and they're telling a joke, and it involves a blonde, the blonde jokes. But it's pretty graphic. And you hear that kind of stuff every day. Is that a hostile environment? Probably. Should you be subjected to that every day? Well, you don't have to stay there. No, that's not the way it works. Not the way it works. It's not a proper thing to do. That's hostile environment. Now, hostile environment is a little harder to prove. If I'm a manager and you come into my office as an employee, and I have a Playboy calendar on my desk, and facing me is Miss August. But since July was last month, facing you may be Miss July as you walk in and sit down. Now, is that sexual harassment? Is that hostile environment? I don't know. I mean, it's a calendar, okay? Can't I have a calendar on my desk? Maybe. If my office otherwise is a normal, regular office, but I have my Playboy calendar here, that may not be sexual harassment. It's hard to tell. That's what I say, it's kind of a hostile environment. It's a little harder to figure out. If you came into my office and I had artwork all over my walls, artwork of men and women in all sort of interesting positions, maybe with little or no clothing on, would that be hostile environment? You betcha. I know y'all are looking at me saying, this guy's, no, I'm just trying to explain something that's really, really important. Sexual harassment. It can happen and you're in trouble. All right, so quid pro quo, sexual favors for job favors, and hostile environment. You don't want to get involved in sexual harassment. You say, well, look, the guy with the calendar, what would you recommend, Professor Lane? Here's the deal. That's what I'd call a gray area. I don't know if that by itself would constitute sexual harassment or not if I decided to have my Playboy calendar out on the desk. But here's my idea. Why take the chance? Why take the chance? If I have my Playboy calendar, and I'm here at my desk, why don't I just put my Playboy calendar in my desk drawer? Where if every once in a while during the day I want to say, now what day is this? Oh, okay, this is the 3rd. I put it back down. I hope you're laughing. But anyway, don't get in the gray area when it comes to sexual harassment. Just don't put yourself out there at all. One last thing, and I'm done with sexual harassment. Just about done with this chapter. It's an interesting chapter. Human resource management is very interesting stuff. Now, I started thinking, I don't think I'll go, I mean, it's going to take a while to talk about it, and I think I'll just leave it at that. Quid pro quo, hostile environment. Just make sure that there's no, not only stay out of what is obvious, but stay out of the gray area as well, and that's important. One quick thought on this though. The supervisor in a department is dating one of the employees. Now, a lot of companies have rules against doing that. Let's just pretend they don't have rules against that, just for fun of it. and the supervisor is dating an employee. And the other people in the department, that is so cute. They are such a cute little couple. Oh my gosh, they just seem like they enjoy each other so much. And then, all of a sudden, a promotion comes up. And the supervisor, who is dating Sally, the promotion comes up, and the supervisor promotes Fred, because Fred is the best qualified for the job, in their opinion. Woo! Sally gets mad. Sally gets mad because she thought she was going to get that. And all of a sudden, that sweet, wonderful, loving, little cute relationship that's going on gets real toxic. And all of a sudden, Sally's talking about all the things you led her on with. Don't want to get there. Now let's go in the other direction. Promotion comes up. Sally gets it. What do you think the other folks in the department are going to think? Well, we know why Sally got it. Sally's been working on that for a pretty good while. Now, again, you just don't want to go there. Last thing in this is something relatively new, bullying. Bullying is kind of like sexual harassment. It's something that should not be done. Repeated mistreatment of one or more persons. Now here's the thing about bullying. What constitutes bullying? That hasn't been as defined as sexual harassment. Quid pro quo sexual harassment, we know what it is, and we know that it's illegal, and that's that. Hostile environment, there's been enough case law that's come up and enough things that have gone up about we have a pretty doggone good idea about what hostile environment is now. It's still a gray area in some places, but a pretty good idea. Bullying, on the other hand, that's still kind of the new kid on the block. What is bullying? You need to go get that job done now. Did I bully the person? No. I was just, I didn't mean to bully. Bullying isn't quite as well defined. Bullying on the job is not legal. It's not proper. It's not what you do to retain people and to develop your people. So, even though the case law on bullying has not been developed to the point that it has on sexual harassment, be smart with that as well. You don't have to bully people. If you're an effective manager, you don't need to use bullying. Remember, you're a coach, a mentor, a trainer, a motivator. That's how you get your people to do what they need to do, not bully. Okay, I think that's it. I think that is our chapter on human resource management. We have finished Unit 2. We're halfway through Business 210. Now, you're getting ready to take test number 2, another 100-point test. Now, you should be really ready for this one because you've already had one. And you know about, so you've looked at these videos, you know what the know stuff is, you know what the be familiar with stuff is. You've gotten the study notes, you've gone through, you've highlighted stuff there. You should be ready to take test number 2. And so I want you to do a great job on test number 2. And then we're halfway done. Then we get, I think we get into the organizing function next. All right, that does it. I've enjoyed human resource management with you. A loud clap for my executive producer, Ryan Pierce, and we are done. Good luck on test number 2.